This is Sarah Jones on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe to our Substack newsletter so you do not miss any episodes. Today we're going to talk about how the Republican circus poses a national security threat. Incoming House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries described the Republican circus in Washington as chaos, crisis, confusion, and craziness. I'm afraid that he is correct. But even worse, these folks represent a real national security threat. Not only are they being led by what's been labeled the Sedition Caucus, because major players in the domestic terrorist attack on our country have been elevated to leadership positions instead of being kicked out or at the very least diminished. And these folks see anyone in the Republican Party who did not vote to overthrow the U.S. government when they lost an election as the problem. But also, we learned on Monday that the January 6th committee Chair Representative Benny Thompson and Committee Vice Chair Representative Liz Cheney feared Republicans will leak the names of national security personnel who work at the White House and who testified to help their country before the now disbanded U.S. House Select Committee's 1-6 investigation. Thompson and Cheney said in a letter to the White House that White House employees had provided very important information for the committee's investigation and have had their identities shielded, but warned that with the changeover, they can no longer ensure enforcement of the commitment to maintain the confidentiality of the identity of the witnesses. They have concern for the safety, security, and reputations of the witnesses. And who can blame them? We have all seen what happens to anyone who gets on the bad side of Donald Trump. But of course, this kind of political extremism and even terrorism isn't relegated to, just Trump supporters. There are extremists on both sides. But the extremists on the right are responsible for most of the domestic terrorism that we're currently experiencing. And they were also using these same tactics back during President Obama's leadership. So we shouldn't allow this to all be laid upon Donald Trump's feet. The Tea Party bringing machine guns to town halls to stop the Affordable Care Act wasn't exactly a gesture of willingness to share power with the executive branch when they don't hold it. But just based on the earlier testimony in the January 6th committee, we now know that witnesses who cooperated will be targeted if their names are leaked. What would Republicans get out of leaking those names? Why would they jeopardize their own country? Well, it seems like the only answer to that is that they would wish to further obstruct justice and to send a message to anyone even thinking about coming forward that they will be harassed, threatened, and possibly even physically harmed. This party is operating more and more like an organized crime operation than a political party in a two-party democracy. And let's not forget that that was Donald Trump. That's how he acted. There is nothing stopping Republicans in the House from not behaving this way. Donald Trump is the leader of their party only because they lack the will to tell him that he is not. To behave differently, to make choices that are patriotic, that are responsible. They are choosing not to do that. They are choosing to become Donald Trump. And the way that he ran his businesses before he became president and the way he ran his presidency. In December, we learned that in her September 14th deposition, former White House aide and assistant to former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, Cassidy Hutchinson, was assigned a lawyer by the Trump team, something that they do a lot and did a lot of, and it is also how the mob and the mafia work. because that lawyer can then control the witnesses. And they have a responsibility to the person paying them, not to the person that they are representing. So that lawyer then took a call with New York Times Trump whisperer Maggie Haberman, even when Hutchinson asked him not to. Hutchinson said under oath that the same Trump lawyer who told her to lie said, "Don't worry, Maggie's friendly to us, we'll be fine." And I want to read you that whole exchange. I'm sure you've heard bits of it, but this is from May 17th. They were on their way to Hutchinson's third interview. And that's important because it shows how the Trump lawyers appear to have used friendly media sources to let Trump know what had transpired in a witness's interview. And this is also the last time Hutchinson used this lawyer. And I think she deserves a lot of credit for the courage that she found to say no to these people. You don't see House Republicans having that courage. And this young woman grew up without wealth. Her family is not wealthy. She is not protected the way that wealth can protect someone. So here's her testimony. So we're going to the wharf, and literally, I want to say maximum 2 minutes after we're in the car, his phone starts to ring. And I look over at his phone. We're sitting like probably closer than Jody and I are sitting here, so maybe a foot and a half apart. His phone is ringing, and I look down at his phone. It's Maggie Haberman calling him. And I looked at Stefan, and I said, "Stefan, did you tell Maggie Haberman that we're having a meeting with the committee today?" And he's like, no, maybe that's not what she's calling me about. And I said, "Stefan, did you tell Maggie that we were meeting with the committee today?" And he said, no, but I should probably answer to see if she knows, right? I should answer. And I said, "Stefan, no, I don't think you should answer that call. She probably wants to know if we met with the committee today." He said, "Cass, I'm just going to answer it. It will be like 2 seconds. I just want to find out what she's going to talk to me about." He answers. I can't hear what she's saying, but I hear Stefan say, Yeah, we did just leave her third interview. You can put it out, but don't make it too big of a deal. I don't think she'll want it to be too big of a deal. All right, thanks." And I said, "Stefan, was that Maggie Haberman asking about my interview?" And he said, "Yeah, but don't worry, she's not going to make it a big deal." And I said, "Stefan, I don't want this out there." He said, "Don't worry, like Maggie's friendly to us, we'll be fine." So I was just like, whatever. That's the end of that interview. Haberman followed that up with a tweet about Hutchinson's appearance at her third deposition. Back in July, Cheney said that several witnesses had been contacted ahead of questioning, including this message sent to Hutchinson in an apparent attempt to influence her testimony. They didn't say at the time who had sent it, but it was later reported to have been sent by Mark Meadows to Hutchinson. "A person let me know you have your deposition tomorrow. He wants me to let you know that he's thinking about you. He knows you're loyal, and you're going to do the right thing when you go in for your deposition." Does that not sound like every mafioso we've ever heard about? I mean, this is the way that they communicate. They play the law very well. Never come out and say the thing. They have to read through the subtext of what's being said, but I think it's very clear what the subtext is here. And if we put that in context with calling Haberman, we see a very effective and well-oiled, mob-esque kind of pressure campaign. And I do want to point out here that Haberman might not be friendly to them. That's their word, and she certainly didn't report on these matters to help Trump pressure witnesses. But all journalists know they can be used inadvertently for such purposes. I do think that at this stage in the game, she could have known how that was going to be used. Everyone has to make their own choices in order to get access for interviews. I wouldn't have wanted to be that person who was putting a witness in that position. But I don't think that she did that on purpose. There's two different goals being achieved. One, her goal to get a scoop, and their goal to use the media to keep tabs on a witness, and to give information. I mean, it's very convenient because there's no paper trail here to let Trump know that everything was fine. She didn't say anything terrible. Of course, after that, she got her own lawyer, and then she started telling some very damaging facts. There was even more mafia approach to presidency later in this report, when we learned that kind of hush money was paid out to organizations to keep people who were involved quiet. The January 6th committee pointed out that Trump and his lieutenants engaged in at least 200 apparent acts of public or private outreach, pressure, or condemnation regarding state officials to overturn the election results. Trump's team contacted nearly 200 state legislators from battleground states to solicit support for overturning the election. At least some said they were on behalf of the president. On January 2nd, 2021, nearly 300 state legislators from battleground states participated in a private briefing with then-President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, and others. Before January 6th, there were other opponents who got targeted by this kind of machine, including Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who made a courageous decision to share her experience of being reportedly sexually assaulted by Brett Kavanaugh years ago, only to have to move from her home and be unable to go to work due to threats. So we've established the pressure campaign, but you might be thinking that you don't see national security risks yet. I would argue that a party enabling an attack on its own country is obviously a national security risk, in addition to the foreign interference they've allowed and seemingly encouraged, and specifically the Russian talking points that many in the party have adopted against their own country and against Ukraine. And that started in 2016, when they allowed Donald Trump to alter their party platform in regard to Ukraine. But no, it actually gets worse from that, so I think I can make this case. Here's a moment that is simply stunning. We have heard of this before in Bob Woodward's book Peril, but it was confirmed in 1/6 committee testimony, which is being given under oath, so it has a new weight to it. This is Speaker Nancy Pelosi asking the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff if the nuclear codes were safe, because she feared that the president was crazy. Yeah. Okay. This stuff is it's absolutely stunning that this is the man in charge of the Republican Party still. That's what their whole war is about in the House. And this is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is his testimony regarding this January 8th, 2021 call where Speaker Pelosi was concerned what Donald Trump might do to stay in power. So here's the transcript. Yeah, what prompts her call is concern about the president's stability or mental health. She even says in the call, "You know he's crazy, don't you?" And she is reported to have said, General Milley, that you agreed with her. You said, "I agree 100% with everything you've said." The one thing I can guarantee is that the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I want you to know this in your heart of hearts. I can guarantee you 110% that the military, use of military power, whether it's nuclear or strike in a foreign country of any kind. We're not going to do anything illegal or crazy. You reassured her that despite her concerns about the president's stability, the nuclear codes and the launch capacity has to go through this process. And you personally reassured her that nothing crazy, the word you used, happens. His answer, that's right. And I was, talking to the Speaker of the House. As you are all aware, the current Speaker of the House is no longer the esteemed Nancy Pelosi. We don't have one as of this recording because the Republicans are having a war among extremists to see who can seize the most power from the Speaker in order to misuse the power granted to the U.S. House of Representatives, to abuse that power to go after political opponents instead of doing the work they were ostensibly elected to do. We don't have a Speaker of the House. There have been 2 votes now, and we do not have one. As of this moment in this recording, we do not have one. Former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund warned us in his new book, Courage Under Fire, that the Capitol is still not safe from domestic terrorist attacks. This is coming from top law enforcement. I mean, this is absolutely astonishing. It's astonishing that there's been no one in the Republican Party with the courage to put a stop to this, to say no to Donald Trump, to say no to these extremists, to just do their job, to show up to work, to, in good faith, argue with Democrats over policy in vigorous debate. That's what they've been hired to do. That's what you pay them to do. That's nothing like what they're doing. So back to the House, the New York Times reported, this just kind of tells you where, how things are going, that Brazilian authorities intend to prosecute George Jewish Santos for fraud. These are the kinds of people that in a healthy political party would be not invited. They would be rejected. But Republican leadership can't afford to give any members the boot, even if they attacked their own country or, tried to steal the votes from millions of Americans, or defrauded people, because they only have a 4-seat majority. They were expecting to have a red wave, and they've only got a 4-seat majority, and this is what they're doing to hold on to power. This is what they're willing to do to hold on to power. They can't even put the country first long enough to realize, to take a look at themselves and say, we aren't fit to govern. We don't deserve this majority. We can't handle the power, and we shouldn't have it. So they're still fighting. Who's going to be Speaker? The folks that don't want Kevin McCarthy want Jim Jordan. How does that sound? Yeah. None of this concern is hyperbole. I wish that it were. I've been covering politics since 2010, and the Republican Party has only gotten worse in that time. Jake Sherman tweeted, I've been covering House Republicans for 13 plus years. I've never seen lawmakers so uncertain about what comes next. Tons of anxiety, nervousness, and fear about today, this week, and the future. Unbelievable. The House failed to elect a speaker on the first ballot in 1923, and it happened again today. That's how effective these people are. The House Republican caucus melted down into a shouting match as they reportedly started screaming at each other before the speaker vote today. These are the people in charge of the U.S. House. Meanwhile, Jason Easley noted in Politicus USA, Democrats have been bailing out inept, dysfunctional congressional Republicans for over a decade, but not anymore. Kevin McCarthy is on his own as Democrats will stay united behind their new House leader. Speaker Pelosi's last Dear Colleague letter really got me last night. In it, she closed by thanking for the well wishes for her husband, who was attacked by a person radicalized by Trump Republican Q rhetoric, who wanted to use her as an example to force Congress to do his bidding, which is also known as political terrorism. She wrote, "With gratitude for your kind wishes to Paul." It should trouble everyone in this country that Speaker Pelosi's last 2 years have been marred by domestic terrorism at work and at home. Her husband was attacked in her home. She was attacked, or was the target of the attack, on 1/6. She had to do the job that Donald Trump would not do that day. She alone, left to, in hiding from this violent mob, was left to try to protect this country. Shame on this Republican Party, and may we somehow be saved from their immeasurable failures. We all deserve better than this. We deserve better than this. We do not deserve to have a party in charge in this Congress who can't even elect a speaker, who can't throw people out of their own caucus or at least take committee chairs away from them, who were a party to, will not condemn the theft, the attempt of theft of votes, and an insurrection, a domestic terrorist act against their own country. These people should not be in the U.S. Congress. We all deserve better than this. This is Sarah Jones on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily, trying to hang on. Today has been a rough day. If you are also tired of billionaires who have brought these people into Congress with dark money, controlling the news that you see, and you want to be part of this movement to support news for the people, subscribe to our Substack. Share our Substack on your social channels. And we would love for you to leave comments and questions as well. Thank you so much for checking in today. I hope by the time you hear this, we have a speaker. And remember that at least there are checks on these people right now. We've got sane people in the Senate and the White House. And let's just hope that's enough. All right. I wish I could be more positive today, but this has just been really ugly. It's been ugly. So that's the end. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much.